She thought he was gone forever. Life moved on. But what if one moment could change everything? What if the past comes walking back into your life right when you've finally found peace? She thought he was gone forever. Life moved on. But what if one moment could change everything? What if the past comes walking back into your life right when you've finally found peace? The early morning air at Heartland carried a certain peace, the kind that only comes after years of hardship. It was one of those quiet mornings when nothing seems to go wrong. The sky was still painted in soft blues and purples, and the sun hadn't fully climbed over the hills. The fields glowed with dew, birds chirped, and the gentle sound of horses shifting in their stalls filled the silence like a soft song. Amy Fleming stepped outside, wrapping her jacket around her a little tighter. The air had a chill, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was familiar, like a whisper from the past. She walked toward the barn, her boots crunching along the dirt path, her mind already full of tasks for the day. Feeding, training, checking the new maraes. They were all part of her rhythm now. Work was not just a responsibility anymore. It was her comfort, her healing, her way of living in a world where Ty was no longer beside her. It had been years since she lost him. Years since that night in the hospital changed everything. But still, his presence never fully left. Not from her dreams, not from the house, and certainly not from the ranch. Every wooden post, every saddle, every trail reminded her of the man who helped her grow and the life they were building before it all fell apart. She didn't talk about him every day anymore, but his absence echoed louder than words ever could. Inside the barn, Spartan neighed softly as Amy approached. The old horse had been her companion through the hardest parts of her life, and he seemed to sense her moods more than anyone. She rubbed his nose gently, smiling through a feeling she couldn't quite name. Maybe today would be good. Maybe it would be simple. Just another day at Heartland. Back at the house. Lindy was already wide awake, bouncing with the kind of energy only a child could have so early. She raced down the stairs, her curly hair flying, clutching a drawing in her hands. Mom. Look what I made, she shouted, holding it high. Amy knelt down, taking the paper. It was a stick figure, family Ami, Lindy, Grandpa Jack, and a tall man with brown hair standing next to them. Who's this? Amy asked gently, pointing. That's Daddy. Lindy replied without hesitation. He's smiling. Amy blinked. Her heart skipped for a moment. She didn't speak, just smiled and hugged her daughter tight. Lindy had never met Ty. She was just a baby when he passed, but Amy had made sure she knew who her father was. Through pictures, stories, and bedtime memories, Ty lived on in their home. And yet, somehow, every time Lindy drew him, every time she mentioned him, it still hit Amy like a wave. Love, pain, hope, all rolled into one. Amy placed the drawing on the fridge next to the others. He'd love this, she said quietly. Outside. Jack Bartlett was already saddling up his horse. The old cowboy never slowed down, no matter his age. He gave Amy a nod as she came out of the house, Lindy skipping behind her. Nice morning, Jack said, patting his horse. Feels like a calm one. Yeah, Amy replied. Too calm, maybe. They both chuckled. But Amy couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was coming. She didn't know why, but something in the air felt different charged. As the day moved on, Amy slipped into her work. She brought a new horse, Midnight, into the training pen. The gelding had been skittish, rescued from a rough past, and was slowly learning to trust again. Amy moved with grace and patience, her voice low and soothing. She had a gift. She always had been working with damaged animals, gave her a sense of purpose that nothing else could replace. Watching her. From a distance, Lou sat on the porch with her laptop open. She glanced up occasionally, noticing how calm Amy seemed, how strong, but she knew that strength came from somewhere deep, from a place carved by loss. Later. Lou went inside to find Lindy sitting at the table with markers and paper spread out in front of her. What you're making now? Lou asked, sitting beside her. Another picture of Daddy, Lindy said with a big grin, this time with a horse. Lou paused. She didn't want to make things too heavy, but she couldn't help the lump in her throat. What's his horse's name? She asked gently. Storm, Lindy answered, not missing a beat. Lou looked at the little girl and felt a tug at her heart. Lindy knew so much for someone who had only heard stories. Her drawings, her words, there was something deep and strange about them. As if she felt Ty in a way they couldn't understand. As if he wasn't gone to her. Not really. In the afternoon, Tim showed up at the ranch with his usual chaotic energy. Loud footsteps, a booming voice, and a smile that masked more than it revealed. Asterisk, where's my granddaughter? He bellowed. And Lindy came running. Asterisk, Amy watched from the pen and smiled. Her father had his flaws, but he was always there. And for Lindy, he brought laughter and noise, and that helped break the quiet sometimes. Asterisk, your mom's working magic. Again, Tim said, nodding toward Amy. Asterisk, course magic. Lindy giggled. Asterisk, Amy waved at them, then turned back to Midnight. The horse was slowly lowering his head, a sign of trust, progress. It made her heart swell. There was something pure about earning trust like this. It reminded her of Ty. He had been the first person to really see her, and trust her and let her trust him in return. Asterisk, as the sun began its slow fall toward the hills, the ranch glowed with warmth. Amy finished her session and led the horse back into the barn. She was tired, but in a good way. The kind of tired that feels earned. As she put away her gear and walked back to the house, she heard Lindy laughing from the porch, chasing Tim with a feather. Asterisk inside, the house was full of the soft noise of a family going about their evening. Dishes clinking, someone humming, papers rustling. It was peaceful, familiar, and Amy was grateful. Asterisk, but even in her comfort, even in the stillness, a strange feeling tugged at her. It was something she couldn't explain. A pull in her chest, a whisper in her mind. She shook it off, telling herself it was just a memory rising up. Maybe something from a dream. Asterisk later that night, as the sky turned dark and the stars began to blink awake, Amy sat on the porch with Jack. They didn't speak much, just sat with coffee and the quiet. Asterisk, do you ever feel like something's coming? Amy asked finally. Asterisk, Jack raised an eyebrow. Like what? Asterisk, I don't know, she said. Just something. Asterisk, Jack looked out across the land. You've been through a lot, Amy. Maybe it's just your heart still sorting things out. Asterisk, maybe, she said, but she didn't believe it. Asterisk, the next morning, something strange happened. Asterisk, just as the sun broke over the horizon, the dogs began barking. Lou opened the door, confused. Amy came out, squinting toward the gate, and there, in the distance, was a figure. A man, walking slowly, not rushing, not yelling. Just approaching. Asterisk, Amy froze. Something in her soul felt like it had stopped. Breathing, Jack stood beside her, his eyes narrowing. Asterisk, Amy, he said quietly. You okay? Asterisk, she didn't respond. Her heart was racing. Her hands began to shake. Asterisk, the man came closer, his face still hidden in the shadows of the morning light. Asterisk, then, like lightning striking the ground, Amy whispered one word. Asterisk, Ty. Asterisk, the world didn't move. The birds went silent. Time seemed to stop. That moment right then was the end of the calm, because everything was about to change. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't just memory playing tricks on the eyes. No. Amy saw him. She felt something shift, like the ground beneath her feet had remembered a weight it thought it lost forever. The morning started the same way all quiet miracles do, without warning. Asterisk, just as Amy reached for the halter on the barn wall, something made her stop. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. It was a sensation like the air around her had paused, still, watching, as if the entire ranch had taken a single deep breath and was holding it. Asterisk, she turned toward the house, expecting maybe to see Lindy running down the steps or Jack walking across the yard. But what she saw instead made her heart skip so hard she nearly lost her balance. Asterisk, there was a figure standing at the main gate, still silent, framed by the early sunlight that cut through the trees like golden blades. Her eyes narrowed, trying to make out the face, but something inside her already knew. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a dream, it was him, Ty Borden, or someone who looked exactly like him. Her breath caught. Her fingers let the halter slip. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She took a few steps forward, slow at first, as if afraid he would disappear if she blinked too hard. But the figure didn't move. He just stood there, watching, waiting, as if he, too, wasn't sure what was real. Asterisk, Amy's legs carried her across the field. The world around her fell away. The sounds of the ranch, the rustling trees, the horses, even Lindy's distant voice faded like background noise in a movie. Asterisk, Ty, she whispered. It came out so faint she wasn't sure she'd even said it aloud. Asterisk, she didn't believe it. She couldn't believe it. But there he was. Same hair, same build. Even the way he stood it was all too familiar, too real. The way he held his shoulders, The way his head tilted slightly when he saw her coming closer, she knew that posture better than her own. Asterisk when she was close enough to see his face. Her knees nearly gave out. It wasn't just someone who looked like him, it was him. Asterisk older. Thinner, eyes more hollow than she remembered. But it was Ty. Her Ty. Asterisk.
Amy stopped a few feet from the gate. Her voice cracked as she tried again. Is it really you? He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Only his eyes responded, Dawn. They were full of everything she remembered. Pain, love, regret. 1,000 emotions fighting to break through silence. I'm sorry, he said finally. Just 2 words, spoken like a man who had carried them for years. Amy stumbled back. Her mind raced. Her chest heaved. Everything in her screamed that this couldn't be happening. Ty had died. She'd buried him, mourned him. How could he be? Standing right here, in front of her, breathing. But she didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood there. And stared behind her. Lindy's voice called out, Mom? Amy turned halfway, her hands trembling. Lindy was running toward her, barefoot, holding a doll. She stopped when she saw the man standing behind the gate. The world seemed to go. It's even quieter. Lindy looked up at Amy. Who's that? Amy couldn't speak. Ty slowly bent down, eyes wide with disbelief. His voice trembled. Lindy. Tilted her head. Do I know you? Amy fell to her knees. This couldn't be real, could it? Jack came out of the house then, and the moment shattered like glass underfoot. He rushed forward, stopping beside Amy and looking past the gate. His eyes widened, face pale. Amy, he said slowly. I know, she whispered. It's him. Jack looked like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. Maybe they all had. But Ty didn't look like an illusion. His chest rose and fell. His feet crunched against the gravel. He stepped forward, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, photo-creased, torn, weathered by time. It was a picture of Amy and Lindy. One Amy had once kept on her nightstand. The one that went missing years ago? How? She started but stopped. The words were too heavy. Ty spoke softly. I never stopped thinking about you. About her, Ty, Amy said, almost pleading. You died. He shook his head. No, I was taken. I was lost. But I never stopped trying to come back. It sounded impossible, like something out of a movie or a dream. But the look in his eyes, so familiar, so broken, told a different story. It was real. Somehow, against every law of logic in life, Ty was back. Lindy stepped forward again, this time closer. Are you my dad? The question fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Ty's eyes filled with tears. His lips quivered. Kay crouched down, looking into her eyes. Yes, he said. I am. Lindy didn't move. She looked at him the way a child looks at the stars, not fully understanding, but believing anyway. Then, as gently as a breeze, she reached out and touched his face. Amy collapsed into Jack's arms, sobbing. This moment, this impossible, sacred, terrifying moment, was real, and nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. It should have been the happiest day of her life, but something about Ty's return didn't sit right. Like the wind was blowing from the wrong direction. Like the walls of Heartland knew a secret no one was ready to say out loud. Not even him. The house had never been this quiet, not even after Ty died. Asterisk, that silence. Years ago had been full of grief. But this silence? It was full of questions. Asterisk Amy sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on her knees, hands trembling in front of her mouth. Across from her, Ty sat still, shoulders hunched. Eyes fixed on the floor like he was afraid to look her in the eye. Asterisk in the corner. Lindy napped in a chair, curled up with her doll like nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just met the father she never thought she'd see outside of bedtime stories and fading photographs. Asterisk. The living room was drenched in soft afternoon light, but it felt cold. The fireplace flickered but gave no comfort. Asterisk Jack stood by the window, arms crossed, his jaw tight with emotion. Tim paced like a storm waiting to break, muttering to himself, casting quick. Angry glances at Ty. Lou had shown up as soon as she got the call. Now she stood beside Amy, one hand resting on her sister's shoulder, the other clutching her phone like it was the only thing grounding her in reality. Asterisk, say something. Amy finally whispered, her voice paper-thin. Asterisk Ty looked up, his eyes rimmed red. I don't know where to begin. Asterisk Jack turned slowly. How about you begin with where you've been for the last 6 years? The room tightened. Ty opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands gripped his knees like he needed to, physically, hold himself in place. I don't remember everything. Not clearly. After the hospital, it's like I woke up somewhere else. The clinic. A man told me I'd survived, barely. That there was an accident. A mix-up. They thought I was someone else. Asterisk Tim exploded. Are you telling me we buried the wrong man? Asterisk Ty shook his head. No, they switched IDs. It was chaos. I couldn't speak. My brain, it didn't work right. I didn't even know my name for the first year. Asterisk Amy covered her mouth, trying not to sob. Lou stepped closer, her voice softer now. Ty, why didn't you come back sooner? Asterisk. Tried, he said, but every time I thought I was ready. I wasn't. I was ashamed. I didn't want to be someone broken returning to a life that had already healed. Asterisk Amy stood, suddenly overwhelmed. Do you think we healed? Do you know what it's like to tell your daughter her father's gone every night for 6 years? To keep your head up when your heart's buried 6 feet under a memory? Asterisk he nodded slowly. I saw her picture in a newspaper. So? I found you again. Asterisk Jack cut in, his voice low and dangerous. You should have come back the moment you could walk. Asterisk I was scared, Ty admitted. What if there was no place left for me? Asterisk Amy's voice cracked. You were always my place. Asterisk silence fell again. This time it felt like morning all over. Asterisk Tim turned away, fists clenched. Jack sat down in the armchair, rubbing his face, worn beyond his years. Lou finally asked the question that none of them wanted to voice. How do we know this is really Ty? The words hung in the air like smoke. Amy flinched. Lou, asterisk, but Lou didn't back down. Come on, Amy. We all want it to be him. But wanting doesn't make it real. What if it's some man who's just trying to... Asterisk, I know him, Amy said sharply. I know his voice, his eyes. It's a scar on his shoulder. Asterisk Ty gently pulled back his collar, revealing the crescent-shaped scar from a fall he took years ago. A detail no stranger could have faked. Asterisk, but the doubt lingered, like a shadow cast by a flame too small to light the whole room. Asterisk Lindy stirred in her chair, blinked, and sat up. Her tiny voice broke the tension like glass cracking under weight. Is Daddy staying for dinner? The room softened in that instant. Ty smiled, tears welling in his eyes. Only if that's okay with your mom. Asterisk Amy didn't answer right away. She looked at the man in front of her, the man who was her husband, her past, her deepest wound. She didn't know whether to fall into his arms or run until she couldn't see the ranch anymore. But she nodded. Yeah, said, he can stay. Later that night, Amy stood alone in the barn. Spartan nickered softly behind her, but she didn't turn. She just stared at the moonlight bleeding through the wooden beams. She didn't know what was real anymore, but she knew one thing. The Ty who had returned wasn't the same man she lost. He was older, quieter, haunted. Asterisk, and even though her heart screamed with hope, something in her soul whispered, be careful.
Asterisk sometimes the heart doesn't need proof, it just knows. Long before grown-ups ask their questions or let fear cloud their eyes, children feel what adults have forgotten. Truth doesn't always knock. Sometimes it whispers. Asterisk the wind was soft that morning, brushing the fields like a lullaby. Asterisk inside the barn, dust swirled in the shafts of light like golden snow. Lindy sat cross-legged in the hay, humming to herself, brushing her doll's hair. A soft rhythm, a tune she had heard, only in dreams. She didn't know where the melody came from, just that it made her feel safe. Asterisk Ty sat just outside the stall, not too close, not too far, watching, unsure if he was allowed to move closer. Asterisk Lindy glanced up at him, then looked back down at the doll. You were gone a long time, she said quietly. Ty nodded, unsure how much to say. I didn't want to be. Mom cried, Lindy said, not accusing, just stating it like it was part of the weather. I cried too, he whispered, every day. Asterisk, she looked up again. Where did you go? Asterisk, he hesitated, far away. Somewhere I didn't belong. Asterisk, she studied his face. Not with suspicion, but with quiet curiosity, like she was listening to something that couldn't be heard with ears. Then she asked a question no one else had dared. Asterisk, did you come back because of me? Asterisk, the words hit him like lightning. Asterisk, his throat closed. He swallowed hard. Asterisk, yes. He said, yes. I think you pulled me back. Asterisk, Lindy stood up and walked toward him, her doll forgotten in the hay. She stopped just inches away and held up her hand not to shake, but to touch. He didn't move. She placed her palm over his chest, right where his heart beat. Feels real, she said, eyes locked with his. Then she smiled. Not a shy smile, not a polite one. A knowing smile. I dream about you, she said. You come to the tree by the river. You tell me stories. You hold my hand. Asterisk Ty's eyes flooded. I didn't know you could remember that. Asterisk Lindy tilted her head. I remember you smell like horses and pine trees, like the coat Mom keeps in the closet. Asterisk Amy stood in the doorway unseen, listening, watching. Her hand covered her mouth as her heart caved in. She remembered the coat too. She kept it in the closet for years. Sometimes she pressed her face into it just to remember what he smelled like. Asterisk, and now her daughter remembered the same. Asterisk, Lindy sat down again, patting the spot next to her. You can sit, I don't mind. Ty moved slowly, as if approaching a sacred place. He sat beside her, asterisk, for a few moments. Neither spoke. They just listened to the horses breathing, the leaves rustling outside. Lindy reached for some straw and began weaving it between her fingers. Asterisk, Mom doesn't know if she should believe, she said. Asterisk, Ty stared at her. Do you, asterisk? Lindy nodded. You're my dad. I feel it in my bones. Asterisk, he smiled, broken and full. That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me. Lindy looked up at the rafters. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I see light coming through my window. Not moonlight, just a soft light. I think it's you, trying to come back. Asterisk, Amy stepped forward now, tears rolling down her cheeks. She couldn't stay hidden anymore. She knelt beside them, brushing Lindy's hair back. Asterisk, you've been dreaming about him, she asked. Lindy nodded. Since I was little, but I didn't think it was real. I thought maybe it was just stories I made up. Asterisk, Amy's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Asterisk, I didn't want you to be sad, Lindy whispered, or think I was lying. Asterisk, Amy looked at Ty, and something inside her shifted a tiny, reluctant peace. Not full trust, not yet, but something older than words. Something true. That night, Lindy insisted Ty read her a bedtime story. He chose an old book, The Black Stallion, the one Amy used to read aloud when she was pregnant. His voice was soft, sometimes catching, sometimes strong. Lindy rested her head against his arm, eyes fluttering closed before he finished the last page. Asterisk, after tucking her in, Ty stood in the hallway. Amy joined him, arms folded. Asterisk, she doesn't question anything, Amy said, staring at her daughter through the open door. Not the missing years, not the silence, not the impossible. Asterisk, Ty nodded. Kids don't need proof. They feel what matters. Amy leaned against the wall, exhausted. She remembers the river tree. Asterisk, he smiled faintly. That's where I went every time I could. In my mind, in dreams, I think somehow she was always there. Asterisk, Amy blinked at him. I don't know if this is real, if I'm dreaming, if you're going to vanish when I wake up. Asterisk, I understand, he said, but I'm here. I'm real. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him long and hard. Then finally, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Not like a wife, not like a widow, asterisk. Like someone learning how to trust again. Asterisk, the truth doesn't always come in headlines or hard evidence. Sometimes, it comes in the way a man holds a mug. The sound of footsteps on the stairs, a laugh that echoes through the halls like a memory finally waking up. Asterisk for 3 days. The ranch lived in a strange kind of silence, not empty, but heavy. Asterisk Ty slept in the old cabin. Amy didn't ask him to stay in the house, and he didn't offer. It wasn't cold between them, but something remained unspoken, a line neither was ready to cross. But during those days, little pieces of truth began to fall into place. Jack sat with Ty one evening and asked questions no one else dared. Asterisk, what year did you and Amy first meet? Asterisk Ty smiled faintly. 2007 I was hauling hay. She was furious. Asterisk Jack nodded. What was the name of the horse you helped her train after her accident? Asterisk Spartan. Ty said instantly. He only let me near him because he thought I was stubborn like Amy. Asterisk Jack chuckled. You two were made of the same fire. That night, Jack stood on the porch with Amy, watching the stars. I asked him questions. Lots of them, Jack said. He remembered every detail. Amy didn't speak for a while. He moves like Ty, she whispered. Even chews the same way. How do you fake that? Asterisk? You don't, Jack said. Not unless you are him. Asterisk still, there were loose threads. Too many years unaccounted for. Too many holes in his story. Asterisk Lou, ever the realist, pulled some strings and sent Ty's fingerprints to a private contact in the city. Someone who could quietly compare them to hospital records and the original death file. Asterisk the results came. Back 3 days later, match confirmed. Amy stared at the paper like it was both a gift and a weight. Her hands trembled. She read it 3 times. Then folded it and placed it in a drawer. It was real. Ty was alive. Asterisk, but now came the harder part. Facing what had changed. Asterisk later that evening, she found Ty by the river, sitting on the rocks near the tree. The same tree Lindy had dreamed about for years. He was skipping stones, like he used to do when he needed to think. Asterisk, she sat beside him, silent for a while. Asterisk, I got the report. She said softly, you're really him. Asterisk, Ty didn't look up. I know I am, but I'm not the same. Asterisk, no one is, she replied. Not after that kind of grief. Asterisk, he finally turned to her. I wasn't just lost, Amy, I was broken. For years, I didn't even know if I wanted to come back. It was easier to believe you were better off without me. But we weren't, she said. I saw pictures of you, he continued. Writing again, smiling, raising Lindy. You looked whole. Asterisk, I wasn't, Amy said. I pretended to be whole because I had to. Because that's what you do when life keeps moving. Asterisk Ty's voice cracked. Can I even fit in this life anymore? Asterisk Amy didn't answer right away. She watched the river, letting the silence settle between them. Asterisk then she asked, do you love her? Lindy? Asterisk Ty's eyes filled. She's my reason. I came back because I couldn't live not knowing her. Asterisk Amy nodded. Then that's a start. She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. I can't promise we'll be okay, not right away. But if you're here to stay truly, then you'll earn your place again. Ty rose slowly, eyes full of cautious hope. I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, something shifted. Not in a dramatic way. No lightning bolts, no tearful speeches. Just a quiet breakfast. Ty helped Jack fix a broken gate. Asterisk Lou sat across from him and handed him a coffee without a word. Asterisk Tim still didn't speak to him, but he watched him. That was something. Asterisk and Lindy, as always, seemed untouched by the chaos. She simply sat in Ty's lap while he brushed her hair, as if she'd known all along that this man was never really gone. Asterisk later, as Amy mucked the barn, she paused for a moment and looked out at the pasture. Asterisk Ty was helping Lindy feed the horses. She was laughing, so was he. And for just a second, just a blink, Amy saw it again. That version of life she thought she'd buried. Asterisk not the same. Not perfect. Asterisk but maybe. Just maybe. Possible. Asterisk.